You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
We got Eric on the line. He called in and wanted to talk about the current topic. Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity. The first thing, and it's hopefully something that we both agree on, is that not all people are the man and not all people are the union, in that neither are perfect and neither are always right.
No.
That's correct.
Anytime you get a large group of people together, there's a chance for
right.
Groupthink.
That's something that I've said repeatedly on the show, is that unions are human institutions, and so you're going to have flaws in unions generally, and you're going to have flawed iterations of unions, just like you will with any human institutions, because humans are imperfect.
That's why I'm concerned about the comments that are like pro-union, pro-union, pro-union. Here's an example question. What do you think about the union at Dunlop Tires?
I work with several of the brothers that come from Dunlop.
Dunlop no longer exists here in Huntsville. I had a half a dozen guys that I worked with that the union came in from up north down to Dunlop Tires, asked them to unionize, really pushed the guys. They unionized them. Within a year, none of them had a job because they closed the plant. This is the one over in Madison.
Yeah.
And so all those guys lost their job because they took the jobs up north away from here. It was a scam the whole time on the guys that were here working and had a good job.
That's a good. Were you actively involved in Dunlop at all?
These were a half a dozen. These were guys that I visited with every weekend. We hunted together. Years.
Okay, so you weren't actively involved in Dunlop.
No, they were actively involved.
Okay.
The
reason that I was
working
asking,
fine, and then the guys they loved their jobs.
Yeah.
They were complaining about that. They had no complaints with the jobs, and one guy was cutting tires. I mean, it was a variety of jobs.
Yep. Yeah, I currently work with a lot of the people that came from
used to be at Dunlop.
Yep, used to be at Dunlop.
Dunlop's
exactly.
gone.
Yeah, exactly. Dunlop's gone. So here would be the question that I pose to you. Do you know anything about Goodyear Tire in Decatur?
I'm like I said, I know good or bad.
Okay.
Yeah, Goodyear Tire I used to drive past, and it was kind of cool that it was there, and now it's gone.
Yeah, and you know what? Wasn't a union. Never unionized. So
that doesn't help. That improves that. That doesn't really necessarily help.
Well, what I'm saying is, because we have a lot of talk that says unions drive jobs out of the area, and the point that I'm making is, I do not believe that unions drive jobs out of the area. I believe what we've seen with NAFTA and numerous other free trade agreements that opens up lower wage working segments in other areas of the world, such as Mexico, such as Taiwan, such as Thailand, such as China, then capitalists see an ability to create more profit overseas and ship the product back into the United States.
There's too many capitalists that do not like NAFTA.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree with you.
NAFTA anymore.
We've still got NAFTA.
That's really not a union. That's really not a union issue. We brought in too much free crap, and we've also opened up too many tire companies that are foreign owned here. That's what caused that. So, the reason we lost that location there is that the union, which has a stronger hold on that tire company, made sure that companies outside of the areas that didn't have unions are the ones that closed.
Well, the analogy that I make would be, we got about 10 more seconds, would be that Goodyear wasn't union and they went offshore as well. It is what it is.
Put it there, boy. We'll show these fascists what a couple of hillbillies can do. Well, I'm going to tell you, fascists, you may be surprised. People in this world are getting organized. You're bound to lose. You fascists bound to lose. Oh, you fascists bound to lose. I said, oh.
folks. Welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is David Story. Eric came with us over the break, and you know, David, you were saying some stuff during the break, and I wanted to reiterate that here. You know, you talked about there are so many with a, you know, you were talking about that Dunlop closed after the union came in, and there were so many similarly situated manufacturers that closed right around the same time that were not unionized. Most of the most workplaces in America are not unionized, and right around the same time, you've got so many different workplaces that are the jobs are being shipped overseas, and the correlation with the unions don't really hold up, but the correlation with NAFTA holds up a lot better, because before NAFTA, you had a significantly higher unionization rate, but you didn't have nearly as many jobs being shipped overseas. If the unions were the problem, then what we would have seen would have been, when Alabama actually at one point had the highest unionization rate in the country. And what we would have seen at that time would have been jobs being shipped overseas. But that wasn't the case, because the laws were such that they couldn't do that. The tax laws, the import and export laws, they were such that you couldn't do that. Once the laws were such that you could ship jobs overseas, and you take advantage of foreign slave labor and then sell cheap products over here to American workers, that they're cheap because of slave labor, then the jobs get shipped overseas, union or not. And so
one of the things that I think is very important to point out, because you don't have And this is not a stab at Eric. This is simple groupthink type mentality that we get when we make broad-reaching statements. And what I do for a living is troubleshoot equipment and program equipment and things like that. And any engineer, this city's full of them. Mm-hmm. You can reach out to any one of them that deal with solving problems on a daily basis. One of the biggest statements you'll hear all of them make is correlation is not equal to causation. In other words, just because something happened here and then there was a reaction, that does not mean that that's what caused the problem. So correlation is not equal to causation. It takes a deeper dive to look at what's causing these problems. And it's very easy to say that just because a union come into Dunlop, that mm-hmm. caused the problem. It's a very broad, wide grasp of what,
And it's very easy to say, because that's exactly what Dunlop wants you to think. That's exactly what.
But the fact of the matter is,
everybody, all of the, capitalist owners want you to think is that worker power is going to destroy jobs. And the fact of the matter is that's not true. And we talked to, at the beginning of this pandemic, when the airlines were going under, we talked to a representative from the Machinists Union who represents a lot of folks in the airline industry. And we talked to them about how their union was able to secure relief packages for the airlines. They were part of the reason that the airlines were able to stay afloat, that United Airlines and Delta didn't go under, was because you had unions lobbying Congress to save the industry.
And it happened the same in my workplace.
Right.
Our lobbyists at the Machinists Union in D.C. helped during the transition of away from Russian rockets into Russian engines in our rockets to American made. And I've got letters from several U.S. senators, our sitting senators, who Senator Shelby, you've never heard me say a bad thing about him, because mm-hmm. he's helped us tremendously. Right. And that is due to the union going in and lobbying Senator Shelby, and getting these legislators process implemented to help the business, not just the workers, but to help the business stay afloat as well. Eric, what else did you have to say?
Okay, I'm going to disagree a little bit on the first part, because the complaint with the union was not because of losing jobs to the union as a whole or the company as a whole. is when they came in, they decided to close a local plant, which should have been the same cost to operate because of the fact that the union cost would have been the same. But they chose to close this plant than the one that they came from. Now, the second one is a little more personal, dealing with 2 years, a fourth and a fifth grade teachers, where the fourth grade teacher was going through a divorce. The union stepped in and would not let that teacher release, so she didn't teach for a year, so had a group of students that didn't learn for a year. And then going into fifth grade, and just by happenstance, had another teacher who was going through personal problem, basically a meltdown, didn't teach for a year, but the union stepped in and did not let that person leave. So that's where I say all unions are not right and all unions not wrong. But that's a case where 2 years had my students not be able to learn. So we had to supplement, and it took about 3 or 4 years to make up for the hassle of that two teachers that could not be removed because of the union.
Yeah.
What do you
I mean, it's
I'm sorry,
near impossible to dive into details, and you definitely don't want to share details
but because
over the
of
radio.
The union stepping in,
the union stepped in and didn't allow those teachers to be fired. Is that what you're saying?
No,
they wouldn't let them be fired, nor would let them be moved. The philosophy was from the unions and tie into the principal we had, not the principal, superintendent we had at that time. That was very strong union. Was, well, we'll just let her finish out the year, and then we'll get rid of her. Like, that solved the problem for the 30 kids that were in the class. And that was 2 years in a row for many of those students.
Sounds like you just said the administration made that decision?
No, the union went to the superintendent, and they both agreed, but the unions were the one that were pushing and she was a pro-union superintendent at that time, and they agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of unions and businesses working in coordination to try to figure out what is the best.
I get out of your way.
I mean, I hate to be a pain, but whenever I'm talking, I try to give you the opportunity to talk, and then it's called a dialogue. So I think that's a perfect.
I'm just attempting to get something out quickly for you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I think that's a perfect example of unions and businesses. In this case, it was the school district working, hand in hand, coordinating to ensure that the employee wasn't wronged in this. And it may have had an effect on some of the people in that. For example, for the school children. And that is the fault of the administration for not saying, we're going to allow you to do this, but we're also going to shift some of this burden of these children into other areas and things like that. The point that I'm making is you can't put the entire problem on the union. There is a coordinated effort between the union and the company. And these contracts that we negotiate collectively, the company has just as much ability to walk away and say, no, we're not going to accept that, as the union does.
Not in that case, they did.
Well, I mean, you said that the administration made that decision, so I feel like...
No, the administration agreed with what the union brought to them.
So collectively, they all agreed.
Allowed it to occur. They didn't stand up to the union because they can't.
Well, I think they can. They can. I mean, they can.
Well, it doesn't work because the union bucks them so hard.
And what can the union do?
Have teachers walk.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Have teachers stop teaching. Sit in the classroom and not teach.
Yeah.
Last one, which is I was I'll call it administrator. I was a professional working out at NASA. Did that for 3 years. One of my tasks as that professional is we would do surveys of all the property on NASA and who was in rooms and who was doing work and such. I would go to room after room where I would find, I'll say room after room, I probably toured 300 rooms, walked in on more than a dozen people sleeping in their office. I dealt with unions that were balking. They did not want to have the open collaboration is what we see in all these office spaces nationally now today where people work together, and they want closed offices. We could not make a change because the union directly enforced that without a question. The administration that we were dealing with for that was union, and the union was not allowing any changes for that to be made. And I sat there and watched hundreds of thousands of dollars go to waste. That's misappropriation, but could do nothing about it. I also watch situations because of the union, and they do this right now at NASA. They hire people as professionals. So, for example, hired a person and used him as an electrical engineer. Someone had never done it. He graduated, but had no training, is not licensed as an electrical engineer, cannot be classified as one. He was designing a 1 megawatt utility plant for them that we were tearing apart as far as staff was, where it was falsely done and bad. They are risking the lives of people because they have people hired without a license, and they're using them as those, claiming they've got experience, and they're nothing but a draftsman.
Yeah, I mean,
and that is because of the union requiring that to occur nationally as far as NASA goes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, Eric, we appreciate your time. We're going to have to let you go. We had somebody else on the line that was wanting to talk.
Let me just say this for 1 second.
Well, I mean, real quick, as far as, the small anecdotes, we're only hearing one side of these stories. We're not hearing, as far as that teacher that was going through a divorce, I mean, that's tough. I know firsthand how hard that is, and we're not hearing from this listener her side of the story. We're not hearing her coworker side of the story. We're not hearing the administrator side of the story. And so, I don't know the extent to which the student's education was harmed. I don't know the extent to which the union that he was talking about was risking life by allowing people with experience and not degree qualifications do work. I don't know.
I do know one thing. There's no such thing as a licensed engineer in Alabama.
No, there is. You can be a professional engineer.
The company determines who is qualified to perform engineer duties in their facility.
Yeah, that's true. But there is a professional engineer license. You can get your PE. I know there are people at my job that do that.
Yeah, exactly. A PE, and that gives you the ability to work in the public sphere.
Right.
You don't have to have a PE to work in the private sphere.
Okay.
And that is the point that I'm trying to make. Is yes, there is some regulations. My understanding was a lot of the right wing folks was against regulation, but the company in the private industry, you don't have to have a license. And the fact that someone went through 4 years of school and attained a bachelor's of science in engineering, if they're unable to perform their job, it is the company's responsibility to ensure that they're performing their job. It's not the union's responsibility to ensure. Now, granted, we take a lot of onus on ourselves to ensure that our members perform to the best of their ability. But at the end of the day, it is the company's job. And if the company is not doing that, that is not the fault of the union. That is the fault of the company.
Right. And if you listen to some of our interviews with some of the trade workers, they take a lot of pride in the training that they have. Look, I mean, maybe the union folks were wrong in this scenario. I'm not exactly sure, but that doesn't invalidate the fact that workers deserve to have a voice on the job. Workers deserve to have a say in their workplace. And that's what we're all about. So we got one more segment. We got one person on the line. We'll try to bring him on the other side. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
Folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. And really quick before we get to this caller, I want to mention that Joe Marshall, good brother from United Steelworkers out in the Florence Shoals area, called to make a correction for us on the on something that was said that Goodyear was not union. Goodyear was union with UFCW Local 88T, and they are still union even though they're now owned by some Korean manufacturing company. So the facility is still there.
Is it still there?
Facility's still
I don't live
there.
in Decatur any longer. I thought that facility closed down.
Facility's still there, owned by different people, same union.
So hang on a second.
That's what Joe said.
So Joe's, well, hey Joe, if you're still out there, we certainly appreciate you listening, and we certainly appreciate you calling in and correcting me on that. I thought they were closed down, and I didn't think they were union, but I guess
they
that
did not
kind of
close down, and they are union. So
ain't that strange? Ain't that strange? So you mean that terrible union didn't close Goodyear down?
Right. They did not.
Good
They did not.
Lord.
So thanks for tuning in, folks. We really appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. And if you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You should definitely do that. And you can go back and watch the full show there. We also clip segments throughout the week and release them. So if you don't want to watch the full show, but there was something that we talked about that you think might interest you, you should subscribe to the channel and you can just watch the things that are interesting to you. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We have a website you should go to, thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, you can donate to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. The more listener support that we have, the less we have to rely on advertising. That is good for the long-term stability of the show, as well as enjoyability of the show. I do not enjoy being interrupted by ads, and I'm sure that people listening don't enjoy ads. So, don't like ads, then throw us $1 a month or something. That would be the way to attack that.